Trippy Trek songs. Woo!
All right, strap in, everyone, because today we're going to be doing a deep dive into Sad, Insecure Alcoholic. And this one's really special because we've got, the lyrics, obviously, but you sent over a transcript from a YouTube video of the song A&D, the storyboard for that video.
Wow.
So it's really like we're going behind the curtain here,
Yeah, it's like having a blueprint for an emotional journey.
Yeah.
We've got those raw feelings from the lyrics and then how they're actually brought to life through the performance, through the transcript, and then the visual language that we can see on the storyboard, adds another layer of meaning on top of all that.
Yeah, and I gotta say, just from the first verse, this line really hit me. I drink the pressure away, eat some shrooms, get high, so I float around the place. But don't you cry. Like, that is heavy stuff right out of the gate,
Yeah.
And I also noticed that in the YouTube transcript, there's a slight variation there.
Oh.
Instead of, it's a big reminder Monday night, it just says, it's a big reminder night.
Interesting.
I wonder if that was intentional.
Whether it was intentional or not, I think dropping the Monday there really kind of creates this sense that, this feeling of emptiness that the narrator's describing isn't just tied to the start of the week,
Yeah.
It could be every night for them, so it really expands that scope of their struggle.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if maybe the transcript is actually capturing like a more authentic, less polished version of how the lyrics come across when they're actually sung,
Yeah, definitely.
But back to the lyrics themselves, that line, but don't you cry? Like,
Yeah.
who are they even talking to there?
Right. I mean, it could be a plea to someone else, but it also feels like the narrator is talking to themselves, trying to suppress their own emotions, trying to bottle things up, even as they're admitting to self-medicating.
And then the next line is so vivid, too. It's a big reminder, Monday night, the living room is empty. Just that image, empty living room on a Monday night. I don't know, for me, it just screams loneliness and isolation.
It does, doesn't it? It really reminds me of how negative space is used in visual art to evoke those feelings, You think about, like, Edward Hopper paintings.
Right.
That emptiness, often reflecting those inner emotional states,
Yeah.
So here it's really like setting the stage for a song that is all about that, that feeling of being disconnected.
And then, we get to the chorus, and that's where we get that repeated phrase, sad, insecure, alcoholic. It's almost like they're labeling themselves, trapping themselves with that phrase.
Yeah.
What effect do you think that has on the listener, hearing that over and over?
Well, repetition like that, especially when it's so stark and self-critical, it creates this sense of being stuck,
Mm-hmm.
You think of literary devices like anaphora, the repetition of a word or a phrase for emphasis.
Right.
But here it's like the narrator's hammering home this identity that they can't escape from.
And it's interesting, too, because if you look at the transcript for this section, it seems like they actually stumbled over the words a little bit.
Hmm?
It says, friends say they care and they want to hang out with, but I can't go outside. So they kind of add that extra with in there,
Yeah.
Which makes it sound, less polished, almost hesitant.
It does, almost childlike,
Yeah.
or like they're struggling to communicate,
Yeah.
which, again, really kind of ties into that idea of them, struggling to express their needs, even to their friends.
Okay, so we've got these raw, emotionally charged lyrics, and now we're going to layer on this visual element, with the storyboard. I mean, it's like we're getting to see inside the creator's mind.
Yeah, I know. It really is. Like you said, it acts as a visual map to the song's emotional landscape, and it's amplifying those feelings that are expressed in the lyrics.
So let's start with the first scene, the empty living room. You got dim lighting, minimal furniture, empty bottles. It sets a somber tone right from the start.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a direct visual echo to that lyric that we were just discussing, right? And that clever use of negative space to represent that emptiness that the narrator's feeling inside.
Yeah, and then we move on to floating and escape.
Oh, yeah.
The storyboard says it symbolizes, intoxication and escape from reality, showing the narrator transitioning from sitting on the couch to, like, floating in space.
Who hasn't wanted to just float away from their problems sometimes?
Right.
But, this visual really takes that idea, literally, it captures that feeling of detachment that can come with substance use.
Right. Tears in isolation, another powerful scene. The narrator's in a crowd, but everyone's blurred and they're crying, unnoticed.
Right.
So it's like their tears are invisible.
It really emphasizes that feeling of being unseen and unheard, even when you're surrounded by people.
Yeah.
Their world is literally fading away around them.
But where it really gets to me is ghost in the room. The narrator's with friends, but they become translucent, almost invisible, while their friends are laughing and talking, completely oblivious. And the storyboard actually even mentions the words "help me" floating around the narrator.
Oh, wow. That's heartbreaking. But it's such a brilliant visual representation of that line, "I feel like a ghost when my friends leave."
Right.
So even when they're physically present, they're emotionally invisible,
Mhm.
And that detail about "help me" fading away before being grasped, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It just adds another layer of poignancy to the whole thing.
And then it kind of shifts gears, Contemplating departure, narrators at a train station, suitcase in hand, London skyline in the background. So is this like a literal escape, you think?
Well, it certainly introduces the idea of escape on a grander scale.
Mm-hmm.
They're considering leaving their current environment, trying to find a fresh start.
But even London doesn't seem to offer any solace, right?
Right.
In London's loneliness, they're walking through the city, but still isolated. And in the transcript here, it actually sounds like they're sighing when they say it. London's so lon, like they cut the word lonely short.
Huh. That's really interesting. It could be, the AI kind of struggling with the audio, but maybe it's conveying how heavy that loneliness is,
Yeah.
Like
Right.
they can barely even get the word out.
And the storyboard mentions they're carrying a red suitcase,
Oh, that's significant.
which, red can symbolize so many things: passion, anger, danger.
Right.
Makes you wonder if it represents, more than just luggage, maybe the weight of their past experiences.
Or maybe it's that flicker of hope,
Mhm.
that desire for that fresh start.
It's amazing how one little detail can spark so much discussion.
I know, right?
But before we move on, I do want to point out, how the language of the storyboard is just so different from the rawness of the lyrics. It's so much more clinical, descriptive.
Yeah, it's almost like comparing poetry to an architect's blueprint. I mean, the storyboard is a technical document. It's meant to guide the creation of this video.
Right.
Clarity and precision are key there.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that it can't evoke emotions.
Yeah. I mean, the description of ghost in the room with the fading help me, come on, that's powerful stuff.
Right.
So even with this technical language, the storyboard is still conveying the emotional core of the song. It's like they're translating those feelings into a visual language.
Which raises a really interesting question. Does seeing the intended visuals actually change how we understand and feel the song?
And that is something that we are definitely going to be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Sad, Insecure Alcoholic. It's fascinating, how the storyboard tries to translate those raw emotions from the lyrics into this specific visual language.
Yeah, it's like they had to create a whole new vocabulary for feelings.
I know, right?
And they do it with some really striking metaphors, like showing the narrator, floating in space to represent that feeling of escape.
Exactly, yeah. It's a visual shorthand for something that's really complex emotional state. And it makes me think about these differences that we've been seeing between the official lyrics and that YouTube transcript, They're subtle, but I think they might be giving us some more insight into the narrator's state of mind.
Like that line from the chorus, "Friends say they care and they want to hang out with, but I can't go outside."
Yeah,
It's that extra whiff that just makes it sound less polished, almost hesitant.
almost as if the narrator's struggling to form complete sentences, mirroring that struggle to connect.
Right.
Whereas the official lyrics, "Friends say they care and they want to hang out, but I can't go outside," it feels more direct, more self-assured.
Yeah, it really does.
But in the transcript, there's that hesitation.
Makes you wonder if the transcript is actually closer to how the song is performed,
Oh, yeah,
capturing those imperfections that make it feel more raw and real.
definitely, yeah. And speaking of rawness, that moment in the second verse where the transcript has "London so long" instead of "London so lonely"?
Oh, yeah, that one was a head scratcher.
I-
Was it just the AI messing up, or was it a deliberate choice,
Yeah. It's hard to say for sure, but maybe it's conveying that just overwhelming sense of loneliness where even saying the whole word is too much. The lawn becomes like a sigh of resignation, this heavy exhale of despair.
I'm starting to think that the transcript, whether it's intentional or not, is giving us this kind of subtext,
Oh, absolutely.
layer of meaning that goes beyond just the printed lyrics.
It really adds to the feeling of the song's world,
Yeah, Totally.
It's reminding us that art is this living, breathing thing,
Yeah.
Even when we're analyzing like specific elements, we got to consider how they interact and inform each other.
Okay, so we've got these emotionally charged lyrics, we got the visual metaphors of the storyboard, and now this intriguing subtext from the transcript.
Right.
But there's another element that we haven't even touched on yet, and that's the actual music itself.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, yeah. And it's crucial. The music is like the foundation on which this whole emotional journey is built.
So how would you describe the music of Sad, Insecure, Alcoholic? What kind of, like, sonic world does it create?
Imagine the music as a physical environment, right? The tempo sets the pace. Are we strolling, sprinting, floating along? The instruments create the textures. So, lush and orchestral, stark and minimal, something in between. And then the melody, that's like the path that we follow, right? Is it predictable, surprising, full of twists and turns?
So in Sad, Insecure, Alcoholic, we're not on, a fast-paced joyride.
No.
It's more like a slow, introspective walk
Yeah.
through a foggy landscape.
Exactly, exactly. The slow tempo, those ethereal synths, the restrained vocals, they all contribute to this feeling of being suspended in time.
Right.
Almost like we're drifting through a dream.
And we talked about those bursts of emotion in the chorus, right?
Right.
Where the music kind of swells and the narrator cries out for help.
Yes.
Those kind of disrupt that dreamy feeling.
Yeah, and those moments are so crucial, They prevent the song from becoming too static, too one-dimensional. They add this sense of urgency, a reminder that beneath the surface of this music, there's a real struggle happening.
Yeah, it's like those moments are cracks in the surface of that, sonic landscape that you're talking about.
Yes.
Glimpses of the turmoil underneath.
Exactly.
And speaking of glimpses, those variations in the YouTube transcript keep coming back to me, like the short and long instead of lonely. Could those be adding to the emotional narrative too?
I think so, definitely.
Yeah.
Whether they were intentional or accidental, they introduced this layer of instability,
Right.
a sense that the narrator's grasp on language, on communication itself, is fragile,
Yeah.
which mirrors their emotional state, like they're struggling to articulate those feelings.
So it's not just about the words themselves, but how those words are delivered, how
Exactly.
they're fractured and reassembled.
Yeah, and it adds to that sense of fragmentation that we see in the storyboard as well.
Right.
Like in that scene where the narrator's reflection is broken in the mirror.
It all ties together.
It does, yeah. The music, the lyrics, the visuals, they're all working together to create this multi-layered experience,
Yeah.
And when you add in the element of performance, which is captured in that transcript, it becomes even richer.
So it's like we're not just listening to a song, but we're witnessing like a performance art piece
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
unfold in front of us.
And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating,
Yeah.
right? We've gone beyond just appreciating the song on this, surface level.
Right.
We've peeled back the layers, we've examined the building blocks, and we've gained this deeper understanding of how all of these elements work together to create something that is truly moving and thought-provoking.
So we got the lyrics, the transcript, the storyboard, the music, it's like we've assembled this puzzle, and the final picture is just this incredibly complex and nuanced portrait of sadness and isolation and the struggle to connect.
Beautifully said, yeah. And ultimately, I think that's what art is all about. It's about using all these different tools and techniques to explore the human experience,
Right.
to make the invisible visible,
Yeah.
to remind us that even in our darkest moments, we're not alone.
This deep dive has definitely given me a whole new appreciation for Sad, Insecure, Alcoholic and for the power of art, to move us, to challenge us, to help us make sense of the world.
Yeah, I agree.
So what's your final takeaway for our listener?
I would encourage our listener to think about other works of art that have resonated with them on this deep emotional level,
Yeah.
Like what are the specific elements, the words, the images, the sounds that contribute to that impact? And what do those works reveal about their own experiences, their beliefs, their values? Art is a mirror, it's a window, it's a map, It reflects who we are, it shows us different perspectives, and it guides us on our own unique journeys of self-discovery. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep listening.
Ooh, that was a deep dive into Trippy Trek songs. Ooh.